Now that we've managed to whittle quite a lot of the fighters down to just a handful, we can look back at the ones that were eliminated and just go, you could do better. Hey guys, MasakoX here. The Tournament of Power. What a very long and sometimes arduous journey. Now that we're down to the end game with only 2 big teams remaining, we can focus on the traditional Dragon Ball staple of them punching each other in the faces. But while we're doing that, or before we do that rather, let's just take a look at the fighters that were eliminated and analyze them in a way that people can get behind. Lists! You know, because for every Goku, Hit, and Jiren, there's a Borareta, there's a KATOPESLA, there's a Napapa, there's a Lilybo, and I really think we shouldn't forget them. Pop quiz, who was the first fighter to be eliminated? I bet that took you a moment to think that, didn't you? The answer was Lilybo, by the way. So that's why today, we're going to be focusing on my top 10 B-tier fighters from the Tournament of Power. You know, the guys who didn't actually turn out to have much time to shine, but they managed to steal our hearts. Or at least make them remember their name. Or even maybe just be memorable in some ways, good or not so good. Then we're going to exclude the likes of Universe 7 and most of the Universe 6 team because we're pretty familiar with those guys already. I'm talking about the universes that we've only just seen and now they're gone, or the Universe 6 fighters that we hadn't seen yet and now they're gone. And I'm going to include buddies as one count, so, you know, we're not talking about individual fighters, we're talking about teams if they came in pairs. Right, so let's start off with number 10, Dr. Rota. But Masako, why is he so high on this list? In fact, why is he on this list? He hasn't done anything, Masako! Unsubscribe! Okay, yeah, despite being on only 1 episode and doing absolutely nothing, there is something about the character which you really can't forget. Rota has become a really recognizable member of Team Universe 6, not to mention all of the memes and quotes and desires that has been generated in his name on the internet. That's not bad for a comic relief character, eh? And you must admit, you're at least a little bit curious as to why people call him Dr. Rota. You know, instead of just being a parody name for rotisserie pork. Either way, he looks more menacing than Oolong, so I think the title for Dragon Ball's most intimidating looking pig character, I think would have to go to Dr. Rota. So yeah, he managed to win something. Number 9, KAHSERAL. KAHSERAL. After seeing you save Space Cats all those episodes ago, we really thought you were going to be a major player in the Tournament of Power. A character that had true development and backstory. Even more important than the likes of Dispo, we all thought, but no, turns out we were wrong. In the end, KAHSERAL just ended up being the glue that kept the B team together. He didn't really even get to stay in the tournament that long, he kind of went out with the rest of the B team. Still, out of all the fighters on this list, we got a lot of insight into his personality and character, and honestly, if there were a Pride Troopers spin-off manga or a series, I'd love to see more with KAHSERAL involved as being one of the main characters. He's actually an honourable and decent being and pretty humble for a Pride Trooper. And he's also one of the main proponents of justice on the squad, second to only Toppo, of course. Also, he's the pilot of their ship and general of the team. He's an important character. He's like Commissioner Gordon in Batman, only this commissioner goes out and kicks butt. The reason why he's so low on this list is because we really didn't get to see him fight that much, and because of that, he's only at number 9. If we managed to see him fight a little more, then I think he'd be a bit higher. Number 8. MAJORA. Yeah, Universe 4 turned out to be a little bit of a damp squib in the Tournament of Power, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their fighters were bad. They had some really good ones. 2 of them are actually on this list, and this is the first one. And yeah, MAJORA is a blind fighter, and blind fighters are cool, okay? And you, MAJORA, you had really good stuff going for you which made your fight with Krillin pretty interesting. He had a really cool design, a gimmick that was actually kind of unusual in Dragon Ball. Not that I can really say that in terms of other media though. And he had a really pretty funny way of actually being defeated at the end of the day. It wasn't just being simply knocked out, it involved a stinky shoe. And that's just funny. Also, the fight wasn't laughably easy, which actually raised the stakes for Krillin's position in the tournament. It was enough to keep us occupied in the early days of the tournament, and it's just such a shame that MAJORA went out so early. But then again, let's face it, somebody had to. I can't say that for every single fighter here. Still, it's a nice little callback to the OG Dragon Ball with that. Number 7. Borareta, PANCHIA, KOITSUKAI, and PAPARONI. The first team squad on our list. I think it's safe to say that not many of us expected much from the robotic trio and their leader, Paparoni. We thought they were just gonna bite the dust quite early on and they were just gag characters, but like I said in my Universe 3 surprise video, linked to the description and up top, they did a lot more than we thought. In fact, they pretty much did the most damage or became the most intimidating characters from that team. Thank God they just didn't end up just saying their name all the time. That would have just been so annoying. For the longest time, the only notable part of that squad was the fact that Paparoni's ears changed shape when we first saw him. And also the fact we were thinking, why is Paparoni allowed to have a cane when you're not allowed to have weapons in the tournament? What gives? In fact, they actually had something of a game plan unbeknownst to anyone else in the tournament outside Universe 3. They managed to survive for quite a long time, and they even had enough time to be able to form up the absolutely formidable beast Aniraza, something that would become a very worthy monster in the Dragon Ball history books. Individually, you think that these designs are kind of somewhat like Toriyama's, but a little bit crude and basic. But when you combine them together, they make a pretty neat Megazord. And I guess you can also use the phrase greater than the sum of their parts to really describe this team. Number 6, Obuni. You know, the guy with the locket. And yes, okay, Obuni went out quite early and he did have a decent fight with Gohan, but it was very short. But dang it, he was one of the first characters outside of the other universes we really got emotionally invested in. I was sad. I can't forget this guy. His erasure left Gohan with some very heavy emotions, and it really brought to light to everyone involved that the Tournament of Power wasn't something to be taken lightly. This is a very serious competition. Lives were at stake here. All the fighters aren't just loners with no connections whatsoever. Some of them have families. Some of them have people that care about them, and now they're gone. Their friends are gone. Their loved ones are gone. Families are gone. And that's really, really devastating. That was heavy, man. Not to mention he's probably one of the only Universe 10 fighters that I actually really give a damn about. Maybe with the exception of Napapa, because Napapa was kind of cool. For the sake of gravitas, Obuni gets to be on the list. And actually credited with probably being one of the most emotionally invested characters of the B-tier fighters. Number 5, the Trio de Danger. Ah yes, who could forget the Trio de Danger? They had to be on this list, given how much they were present in the opening part of the arc. They were there all the time. And yet, sadly, despite all of that, they were just relegated to the B tier of the fighters, and that's really sad. They were one of the first universe teams to go, and that was just missed, man. And it's really galling, given how much effort were put into their motivation and designs at the right beginning of the tournament. These guys look cool, but Gamo, he's a badass. But really, all they were there for was to establish the fact that different universes had different styles of fighting, and that they weren't going to be the same ones that we saw in Universe 7. You had style, you had pizzazz, you had strength, and you also had the exceptional legwork that was on Basil. I mean, damn, he never skipped leg day. Sadly, elimination came too fast for them because they were far too furious against Universe 7. And yes, granted, at the beginning of the Tournament of Power, pretty much every single universe was gunning for Universe 7, given the fact that it was Goku that put them all in this situation in the first place. But Universe 9 took this way too far. I also really feel bad for them because I can't imagine life being easy under the likes of Ro, who's a real jerk and I'm still glad that he's erased. Number 4, Ganos. Birdman! Ganos, you are a true surprise, you know that? We thought he was just an ordinary goon hired by the likes of Kitella to do some spying, but no. Turns out he was a legitimate fighter after all. He also was able to prove that he had a very interesting transformation that I didn't quite get the lore about on the first bounce, but after some research and on my video, he's basically a living, talking Thunderbird. Not only that, but his fight with Roshi produced one of the most emotional moments of the tournament, and therefore that makes him automatically memorable because you go like, yeah, Roshi was fighting that bird guy. Ganos was his name? Yeah, he was cool. Ganos was part of Roshi's development, and for that, we thank you. He had immense potential, and his powers were actually quite interesting, so congratulations, son of Zapdos. Number 3. KATOPESLA, never surrender, never say die. You have the heart of a hero, KATOPESLA. When we first saw KATOPESLA, we immediately thought that he was just going to be bumped off by some other fighter from Universe 7 and just be there for gags, but turns out sheer persistency and personality kept him in the ring for a very long time. Obviously trying to ape the likes of Kamen Rider, we saw different aspects of his strength. Sometimes he was faster, sometimes he was stronger, sometimes his attacks were more fierce. Sometimes he told us to like and subscribe. In terms of tenacity, he's like a machine. And that's kind of ironic given how pretty much most of Universe 3 are just made out of metal. KATOPESLA somehow managed to win us over with the simplicity of his transformations. It was just a modo changey, something that is very familiar if you're a fan of Power Rangers or other tokusatsu shows. And he had a really lively personality given the coldness of his robotic teammates. Good for you, KATOPESLA. Number 2, ZARBUTO.ZIRLOIN and RANBARA. Quite possibly one of the greatest surprises of the tournament. These guys, forever in the background of Universe 2, managed to rise up and shine when the leaders of their squad were taken out far too early. They managed to step up and count for something, take their powers, and be even more memorable than the original kamikaze fireballs. Before then, we really didn't know much about them except the fact that Zarbuto was a tuffle, and that was a really neat little callback to the early days of DBZ. They managed to keep us invested with Universe 2 after Ribrian's outstayed welcome in the tournament finally came to an end. To make us care about your well-being and actually seeing you succeed, given the fact there wasn't really much to go on beforehand, and despite the ridiculousness of the situation and what they were wearing, is a really remarkable feat, and I'm really impressed. Their performance was truly something, and that's why they deserve to be at number 2 on this list. Boom par par. And now, the winners of the Universal B-Tier Lottery, SAONEL and PIRINA. Yeah, I think this isn't a surprise here. These guys work very well. They got a legitimate reason for being in the tournament in the first place. They were used very carefully. They weren't overused. We didn't see them until quite close to their elimination relatively. And their actions were just really cool. And plus, it's other Namekians. Their story is also really impressive. It's an interesting twist on the Namekian fusion technique that we know very well. At first we thought, oh, you can just do it with maybe 1 or 2 of them, not hundreds. That just gives you limitless possibilities as to what Piccolo can do in the future. Maybe he might fuse with them. So we get a more powerful Piccolo, which brings him back into relevance, much like we saw with Gohan. During their dedicated episode, we got to see them interact with their team and show they actually care about them or want to talk to them. They aren't lone wolves or anything. They have a willingness to protect their universe. It was a really pleasant surprise for the Tournament of Power and a really perfect way to round off the Universe 6 team, so that team was memorable in of itself, almost as much as the Universe 7 team. I really hope that Piccolo gets another chance to interact with you guys. It needs it. So, whenever you think of the Tournament of Power in the years to come, remember that this story introduced to us many interesting characters, quite possibly the most diverse range in the entire show. And honestly, I think it's going to be very unlikely that Toei can top themselves in this regard. And even if the ending of the tournament doesn't really live up to the hype, we still got some very interesting characters and development given from Toyotaro and Toriyama. And honestly, that's one of the most important things in the Dragon Ball universe. Interesting fighters. And different ones at that. And besides, there's plenty of fanfiction material to be had here. I want me some Obuni backstory fanfics. So what do you guys think? Do you agree with this list, or do you have your own list? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Until the next one, be sure to like and subscribe. Catch you later!